everybody. Welcome to Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics. This is Cyrus, and we have a very special guest today, which is Rob Blackburn. So this is an especially important episode for people curious about or skeptical about the concept of physical mediumship. Rob is going to shed some light on the subject because he is a developing physical medium. So let me just make sure I have everything about him right. So he is from Illinois and heavily involved with AREI, the Afterlife Research Educational Institute. I've met Rob a couple of times when I was presenting in Scottsdale, Arizona, last couple of years. And he always has great workshops, always has a lot of cool stuff to talk about. Besides being a developing physical medium, Rob also practices the paranormal ability of working 10 plus hours a day as a middle school teacher. Is that right?
Yeah.
And so kind of want to just hand it over to Rob now. So Rob, can you basically say hi to everybody on the channel and tell us, you know, if you want to just kind of jump into it about how you've gone from, I suppose, you know, having a mild-mannered life, family man, teacher, and going into the very controversial and wild topic known as physical mediumship. And real quick, before I let you answer that, I should let viewers know a little bit who are new around here. Physical mediumship is essentially entering a seance and experiencing paranormal phenomena under controlled conditions. And sometimes it's so wild that a lot of people refuse to believe it's possible. So it does create a lot of controversy in this area. And so, as I was saying, Rob, how did you go from being mild-mannered teacher or whatever it is you were doing when you first got into this to being into physical mediumship?
Well, I began as a mental medium. I worked on my own doing some EVP and ITC work after my father passed away. And both my parents were gone. And so like a lot of people, they get interested in the paranormal through grief. And so I was trying to sort of start from square one and investigate the other side, just doing audio experiments. I did that for a few years, and the opportunity, and I went to the spiritual church that's near in central Illinois, and I went there and I met up with a couple of people that told me that there was an individual by the name of Dr. Craig Hogan who was going to form a physical circle, an experimental physical mediumship circle. And I thought, wow, all right, that completely resonated with me. So I jumped on the opportunity to join that circle straight away. And that was back, I believe, in 2008, 2009. So we established that circle. There were initially a lot of people in that circle, and many of them just sort of drifted away. Up until about 2016. So that circle existed in one form or another. Well, it still exists now. That's our circle, our Sunday circle. But I didn't start, I was a sitter. I would sometimes go into trance. There was phenomena that took place in the room. It wasn't, and we can talk about the kinds of phenomena that happen. But we had minor phenomena for a while. Then as people drifted in and out of the circle, I sat in the cabinet, began sitting in the cabinet, and we had a very dedicated, harmonious group that was sitting. So we had for the first time the perfect kind of like storm for spirit to work with our circle. So I was in the cabinet, and we had other members, including Craig, as sitters. The music was the right kind of music. The laughter was the right kind of laughter. People got along really well, harmonized, and we, you know, we loved each other. We felt very close, and then in that combination of things, physical phenomena started to happen. So it took a long time before we got to the point where, you know, I felt it was necessary to go in the cabinet. There were indications that I should do that, and I did. And so I'm developing in the cabinet in a sort of traditional way for materialization or whatever phenomena might happen in the future. And then the sitters on the outside are in harmony. They're singing, they're having a good time, and they are getting phenomena out there, the energy kind of phenomena that's taking place out in the circle. And that energy then is being used to help develop me in the cabinet. So that's the, I don't, you know, it's a much longer story than that, because we're talking a period of like 10 years, but that's it in a nutshell. Being moved from being a sitter, being initially interested, moved as a sitter, and then eventually being moved to get in the cabinet. Craig built a cabinet. We felt that that was the right thing to do, and I hopped in. I was in there, and it's been gangbusters ever since.
And in case people are wondering, when we talk about a cabinet, so physical mediumship during a seance, as has traditionally worked, the main medium kind of goes to a secluded space, sometimes facing all of the people, but still cut off from everybody else. So kind of like in a little doorway, or literally a cabinet, or sometimes it's like something that's constructed in the middle or just off to the side of the room. And then usually the physical medium goes in there. And in the seance rooms I've seen, for example, just when I was in the UK a couple of weeks ago, usually they have chairs where people are tied up. Sometimes their mouths are gagged. All these things, all to prevent the possibility that the medium is producing fraudulent behavior. Of course, I don't think you guys bother with that, but basically the idea is a bunch of people who don't have experience in this kind of things, trying it out and seeing if paranormal stuff will begin happening if you turn all the lights off in a room and you have a medium going into trance and everybody harmonizing. So as you said, laughing and building the vibration. Well, while I suppose you were working, you know, as a mental medium at the same time in a way to try to bring in your spirit team. Is that right?
Well, the way it goes, so like the cabinet really isn't, it's traditional, it's not necessary. Oh, my dog wants to come up here and say hello. Sorry about that. No the cabinet is the cabinet's it's not necessary. It was kind of, I think, introduced more or less as a, I think it's not so much as a prop, because that's not the word we want to use, but it's not really necessary, but it is really useful to segregate the medium so that the energy can build up. I don't know if this is something that it's really necessary. I don't believe the camp is necessary, but it might have a psychological effect on the medium. And then that separation, because you're sort of relaxed in your own safe space, it helps the so like I said, it's nice to have one because you feel good being in it, and there is a definite difference feeling the energy in the cabinet. It's very, very intense. The other thing it's kind of important to talk about when it comes to a seance setting or seance situation when you're sitting with people, it's not like people might have this idea that you're conjuring spirits, or this sort of 19th century idea that you have this, you know, gaudy looking medium who, you know, there's candles and they're all holding hands, and it's, you know, that sort of comical, you know, seance. That's not what it is at all. What you're doing is you're really wanting to raise your, and I wish we had better language for it, but raise your vibration to the point where you're meeting them. You want to meet them. You want to raise yourself up to meet them. You're not expecting them to come down to you. All right, I know up and down. I don't know if is the internet connection okay?
You're coming and going, but I think we got the important parts in. You were saying that it's about raising your vibrational.
Yes.
To meet. It's not.
Yes.
It's not like in what is it, Ouija, the movie, or whatever that was.
Yeah.
Everybody is you know, like there's a candle and everyone is holding hands, and you know, and creepy stuff.
You want to commune with them. You want them to you offer yourself up as an instrument, as a tool for these beings of love and light. Okay. Now, if you sat around in the dark and you did not have that harmony, and you were not, and you want something to connect with you, something might connect with you, but you don't necessarily know what that is, and you don't know if you can't discern very well, if you haven't developed that sense of what might be a good influence or a bad influence, you might be going down a very bad road. It is not. It's physical mediumship and the seance setting is meant to be an uplifting, loving communion with beings that exist on a higher plane of reality. And I know that sounds maybe woo-woo to some people, but we don't really have the language really to describe this. They are beings that are wanting to manipulate us here on the earth plane so that we can fulfill a purpose in order to help move their agenda along. And that agenda, right, is multifaceted. It's ultimately meant to help other people. It's meant to not so much us, it's meant to help other people. It's meant to open people's eyes, move them away from fear. It's to describe it as a greater morality plan. So people are not, it's not necessarily about the simple phenomena, okay? That's all kind of fun. But that communion, that transformation is everything. So in physical mediumship, it should be surrounded by a sense of love, purpose, and communion with these higher beings of love and light. And again, forgive the language that I use. We don't really have good language to describe where they're at or where they exist. But we can tell the difference between those beings and other beings that would seek to do the same kind of thing, but for a lower agenda. They would seek to hijack the mediums to carry out their agenda. And those beings also exist. So if anyone is to try to sit for spirit.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. So this goes back to what I often talk about in my books and also in the community, is that it's a myth to say that negative things don't exist in other beings.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
we can just jump right in and say that when you get involved in this kind of work, like I don't think there's anybody who tries to practice physical phenomena who would say, oh, it's only flowers and roses and all negative feelings evaporate once you kick the bucket. So I don't think anybody in your field would ever make that claim, because they've actually been playing baseball. They're not just reading about it, and they have experience to know what's really going on. And that
you think that, right? You think that, but I've been told by, when you bring up the idea of the possible negative influences that could sneak in, sometimes you get a raised eyebrow. People don't like to think about that. They don't like to think about the idea of a hijacking, lower beings being able to manipulate and use the mediums for their own purposes. That's not a pleasant thing for people to think about. And I think this is something that the old literature warns against quite a bit. And I think that's something that has been dismissed in the last 50 years and I guess the New Age movements and other people entering into this. I don't know what they teach at the Arthur Findlay College, which is a respectable, amazing institution. I don't know. I haven't been over there to take classes, but I'd want to believe that they would have some education is to tell us that there's a possibility that there could be negative influences. We shouldn't dwell on them. We shouldn't be worried about them, but we should be aware. Like when you go into the ocean, right? You are aware of the dangers. There could be a stingray. There could be sharks. There could be a barracuda. It might be unlikely, but if you practice best possible practices, you will avoid those things because you're swimming in an area that may not have sharks. But you never know, and you have to be aware of the possibility. You have to have that discernment. And that's why the relationship with these beings is so important. Knowing that feeling when you're with them, because then you know that feeling when you're not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And that's, just having that empathic ability, it's like we can use it among each other in this world. And then you can use it when you're practicing spiritual subjects, because then you'll be able to discern what's good and what's bad. So even I use that, of course, with astral projection, for example. And anybody watching can also hone that ability, and they'll never be manipulated, because there's many people like on the YouTube channel in the comments who are freaking out about like negative archon entities are going to trick us when we cross over. And to that I say it's not impossible. I mean, there is a possibility that, why not? If a negative you could impersonate your loved ones. But the thing is, if you've developed that skill at all, then you would know they'd never be able to fool you. And so the biggest danger would be to, maybe drawing that in by one being of a kind of lower level, the negative thinking, I suppose, of being attracting that energy, but also not honing your abilities to be empathic. So you can learn to be empathic. I mean, it is kind of a skill. Some people have it, some people don't. but you can work on that. And I think that's the main skill. So Rob, so kind of to jump back a little bit, back to the beginning of how things were going with you and your development in this area. So you began sitting in the dark. You're with Craig Hogan, who's also been on this channel, on this show. And how long until the first, what we would call paranormal thing began happening? What kind of things began happening? And I know you don't have like a full on materialization circle or anything yet,
Right.
but you've told me that para stuff began happening. Can you tell us a little bit about what began happening?
Sure. Well, we'll flash forward to 2015, 2016 with the current incarnation of the circle. We'd been sitting for quite a while. The phenomena that took place in those early years wasn't very fantastical or anything. But I have a feeling that they were developing me, and they were developing perhaps some of the other sitters as well. Because I would go into trance and come in and out. So by 2016, when the current circle got together, there were manifested, of course, lights. There was touching. There was the manipulation of the sitters. Their bodies would be manipulated and moved in different places. There was, of course, the rapping, the knocking, the table movement, the crackles across the ceiling. There were, I guess you could call them light manifestations, meaning they weren't ectoplasmic, but they were forms that were seen in the room. These tall blue, sort of cylindrical forms were some kind of alien or some kind of non-human entity. But they called them Arcturians. Now, how do we know what they were called? We have a sitter that sits with us. That seems redundant. We have a sitter that she is a very, very good mental medium, and they utilize the talents of the people in the circle. She's so good. I call her the Oracle, right? So it's Vicky. She is able to then communicate with the team. They send her simple images. Nothing crazy, not a series of words, not a paragraph, simple images, which then she then says, either images or words, she'll then say it. And then in response, because, a mental medium can say anything. And normally you want to keep mental mediumship and physical mediumship away from each other. But the team is utilizing Vicky so that she can give messages to us from the team. So she gives her message. She says, I see these beings, and do you see them? And the sitters see them, these tall blue light forms. She says, these are called Arcturians. The team is telling me they are Arcturians. And the table knocks, the table shakes, we have crackles. All of this is validation of what Vicky's saying. So in this way, we're able to communicate, the sitters are able to communicate with the team by validation from table movements or knocking or tapping, kind of in a very traditional way. This is very 19th century, honestly, this kind of communication. And so we're able to, the sitters, because I'm not aware of this, I'm in the cabinet, but the sitters are able then to communicate with the team. They've seen these Arcturians. The Arcturians come. I know it sounds crazy, right? Because I don't know alien species. You got to look it up online. There's all kinds of crazy, ideas of various alien species. But I'm on board. That's interesting. Let's see what's going on. So they come and observe the circle, and they just are there for observation, and they like to observe people that are interested in doing this kind of work. There are animals that have come through that have I guess manifested in a physical enough way that they have scritched and scratched around the bottom underneath the table. They've moved around on the floor. There have been people that have come in that were, I would say, of multiple varieties. We've had people that are coming in from representing different time periods. We have people coming in that are representing, I guess they'd be earthbound. A couple of them were not aware they were dead, which is strange, right? But they were drawn to the circle, and which kind of leads me to think, what kind of control is there around the circle that earthbound people can kind of wander in? I can only imagine that they're allowed to come in
I don't mean to interrupt you. So if that
Yeah.
happens, then what does that look like for you guys? How do you know that there's an earthbound spirit?
Well,
Are you
yeah.
hearing a voice? What's going on? What are people experiencing?
Yeah, so they feel a presence. We'll hear like tapping. There'll be there often are shadow shapes, light shapes or shadow shapes. The room will get darker or lighter. Everyone can see that there might be a form standing there, or and then there's the message to Vicky, and Vicky will say, yeah, there's an individual here, and then the table will knock, and the table will rock, and then other people's chairs will be hit from behind, or shook. So there's the physical phenomena that goes along with what Vicky has mentioned. And Vicky's not the only one. It just now it's more Vicky, but in the past it had been other sitters as well that communicated some kind of image in their mind or a sense of presence. So again, everybody in the circle is a medium. So that's usually, that doesn't always happen with circles, but just happened with ours. Every single person, every single sitter wasn't in their own way a developing medium, a mental medium, and so they were able to pick up various phenomena that were going on, and in terms of like people coming in and visiting the circle. But often, so in physical mediumship, we don't, there shouldn't be a reliance on mental mediumship at all. What there should be is a consensus that a physical phenomena took place. It was a knock. Did you hear the knock? We all heard the knock. There's a light form that's moving across the room. Is everyone seeing that? Yes, we are seeing that light form, or that light form. We're seeing this strange light shape that's moving, right? Everyone's seeing that. So there needs to be consensus about what's being seen.
So when you guys saw the blue light form, which was identified as an Arcturian,
Right.
I've looked into this kind of the wonky ET area myself.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
a lot of people, I mean, I don't really see why not, that there's Arcturians or ETs that have gravity
Yeah.
to that
Right.
level. They can, kind of be in energy bodies at this point because they're a few million years ahead of us. Why not? Um,
Right.
so when you guys saw this thing, what I'm curious about is like, well, how far away was it? How big was it? Was anybody there being a bit skeptical and being like, oh, did somebody leave the TV on and the blue light and the LED is flickering on?
Yeah.
Was there any alternate explanations, or was it like legit? Here's an entity
Yeah.
in the room with us
Yeah.
floating around. Did it interact with anybody? Like what?
Well, there were three of them, and one was bigger than the others, and one was more prominent than the others, but they were like light tubes, and you can see them in the darkness, and they were standing in a particular place, and they stood there until they disappeared. So the room is completely locked down in terms of light. There is no light coming from anywhere. So the room is locked down, and there's no chance that there's any kind of light leakage. And so, a skeptic a hardcore skeptic could say, well, that everyone could have been convinced that they saw the lights. They weren't really there. It's suggestive, right? And everyone says they saw the light because no one wants to be left out. The table rapping could be somebody hitting the table, or this. I mean, you could skeptic away a lot of this if one chose to. But many years that I've been involved in this, it would be very difficult to keep up that level of phenomena if it wasn't real. It would almost seem ridiculous and pointless, because we're not doing it for anybody. We're doing it for the team. We're doing it for ourselves. We're not doing it for any purpose. There's the purpose is development, and the purpose is ultimately to help other people through this phenomena as we develop.
Yeah,
So it doesn't seem like
exactly. I mean, this is why I wanted to have you on, especially because I actually find this type of thing to be more evidential than even the well-recognized physical mediums. God bless them, but it's not going to convince somebody who's on the fence about any of this because of the way. I mean, like you have a celebrity singer in the room tap dancing. I mean, that's not going to convince anybody because it's outside of the threshold of what they would even consider to be possible. But if we, we don't know the background or how that physical medium came to be, or what their entourage is like, or what the control conditions are like. But in a situation like with you guys, I mean, you remind me a little bit more of, for example, the skull experiments, where you have people, just well-intentioned people, they're not making a dollar, having to sit in the dark every week, right, for like hours. Is it every week that you guys were doing this or are doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, every week. So every week you're sitting in the dark, nothing's happening, and then for months, years go by, and then finally stuff starts happening. Correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's how Craig Hogan explained it to me. And so finally, after all this time, suddenly like supernatural things begin happening. The connection is made, and so it's an experimental process. Now, only skeptical explanations, you have all of this, like you have this perfect storm of people wanting something to happen, and so then everybody's mass hallucinating something. It gets really ridiculous, and then the skeptical explanation begins to sound more like a conspiracy theory than something logical. Or if you just follow Occam's razor, is every single person mass hallucinating expectation fulfillment, or is there something going on? So that's what I like about your circle and similar ones that people are putting together. So I want to ask you, so tell me a little bit about this online or Zoom focused physical mediumship experiment. You've only told me a little bit about it, and I'm trying to wrap my mind around this. Can you help me out here?
Yeah, so Craig and I, we created this, we created the Xoom Circle. It mimics the seance conditions found in the seance room, essentially blackout conditions. So no light. So what you do is you would find a space that you have, you'd black it out completely, make sure there's no light coming in. Then you would have some kind of device like a laptop or an iPad or even a phone, and make sure that no light is emanating from that. You connect on Zoom, and we play songs and we sing. And in that, we create that harmony. And you offer yourself up to spirit, the beings of love and light. Of course, we have protection. We have a protective prayer that we do. You have to be in the right state of mind. You have to be feeling well, not sick. You have to be in the right place, and also have some courage to do this, because this is not something that a lot of people are willing to do. But all things being equal, you sit, you sing, you will be touched spirit. Fast lights, perhaps make sounds in the room, knock on your chair, or potentially move things. They could take a trance. The team has told us one of the things they're doing with this Xoom Circle is they're going to try to identify people for development. They're identifying people for trance. They're identifying people that they're able to work with, and then pushing those people then to create their own circles for development. So it's kind of like your first step into a greater world by creating that space for spirit to work with you. We do it every Wednesday from 8 to 9. It's only an hour. We do a little deep hello at the start, and we do the invocation, and we sing for an hour, and then we do a sort of debriefing at the end. We talk about what happened. And oftentimes, people have phenomena. They see lights. People are going into trance. We have had up to about 15 or so people. It's dropped down, it goes up, it drops down, depending on the availability of people. Traditionally, you don't want people to come in and out. You want to have the same amount of people, and it be a closed circle for best results, meeting at the same time every week. We don't have a closed circle. This is experimental. We're asking spirit to work with the sitters where they're at. They're alone. We would prefer they bring in other people so they don't have to be alone in the room. You could have a couple or 3 or 4 people sitting connected to Zoom in this way. So it's an exciting way to connect with your team. You know, a team will, well, the way the teams work, they kind of create them. They establish themselves around people or groups that they want to work with. So they have these specialists, right? And you're aware they have specialists. They decide then to, okay, I'm going to work with these people, this person, and see what we can do with that. And that's kind of what you open yourself up to. You open yourself up to being worked with by teams or specialists on the other side. And if you have physical abilities, if you have trance abilities, they may or may not, you know, work with you. It's possible that you can be utilized in that way, and then know more about your own abilities, which of course you wouldn't know otherwise. So it's an exciting opportunity.
Just jump in. So what's happening is that people are getting on Zoom. There's a digital seance happening. Someone has their laptop out, but I mean, there's light coming in through the laptop.
No, you cover it up. You cover it up.
Okay, so you have the laptop out, you're covering it up, but it's connected. The digital connection is there, but you're covered up. And now you're sitting by yourself in your bedroom, whatever, is being converted into a physical seance, even though you're by yourself physically, but digitally you're not by yourself. And then, you know, things might happen in your bedroom, you know, that you'd expect in a physical seance. Even just sitting there, you're just tapping into the energy digitally through Zoom, through how we're talking right now.
Yeah, your awareness is there. Your awareness is with everybody else. Your awareness is that spirit is working with you. They're going to work with you wherever you're at, and you're giving them the space and the opportunity to do that. Of course, the singing is super important. Singing, getting in harmony with each other, that's super important. So this again is experimental. This is not something that is a standard practice. Craig and I tried to institute a protocol that was as much like the traditional seance as possible. But you know, obviously you're not going to generate a ton of energy sitting by yourself, but you're going to be able over time to have phenomena take place in the room. When I do it, I tend to go into trance. I tend to go in an altered state, and they work on development in my seance room.
If somebody,
the way they do it in the cabinet.
I don't mean to cut you off in a little bit. We're about to go into audience Q&A. If somebody wants to apply to join the experimental Zoom seances, how do they apply?
Oh, they can just join. They just have to follow the protocol. They can just email me if you want to give my. You could put my email in the information. I can give that to you, and they can just email me, and we can go from there.
Okay, I will put your email in the YouTube description link. So I'm probably going to get some emails. I'm imagining, after people hear about this. Pretty, very, very interesting concept. Even sounds experimental from the perspective of people living on that side, because it sounds something that even they wouldn't imagine to be possible. I certainly didn't think it would be possible to use the internet like this. So with that out of the way, real quick, I want to say, if you're new around here, you are watching Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics, where we talk about this kind of crazy stuff. I hope you're having a good time. Go down to that subscribe button, the notification bell, like the video, share the video. All of that helps keep this show on the road. If you want to join these interviews behind the scenes, then I encourage you to become a patron to help support the work. And if you become a patron at the higher level membership at $30 a month, then you can join the group here and talk to guests behind the scenes and all that cool stuff, as well as a bunch of other stuff. So that's what we're doing now. So we're going to actually turn this interview over to the audience to see if anybody has any questions for Rob. And so I'm going to open it up to all you guys. Does anybody here have anything that you want to ask Rob? Let's just jump in if you want to say something. Are you guys feeling a bit shy? Anybody have anything for Rob?
I mean, I have a question, but I don't know if I missed it because I kind of fell asleep for a second because of my medication. But so now with the lights off, is he working like with ectoplasm or whatever, where like the lights cannot be on just in case something happens? Yes,
That's a
right? Is that the
Rob.
reason?
Are you producing ectoplasm, or are you an energy-based medium? Thanks, Keely. I really wanted to ask that and I forgot. But with your medication, you're able to read my mind.
Okay, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I'm working with ectoplasm, but again, it's in the early stages. So
Okay.
yeah, it's in early stages. I don't know how much is being moved out into the sitting area where the sitters are, whether it's contained in the cabinet. But there is ectoplasm of course the sitters too. Ectoplasm can be pulled from them.
Really?
Um, So you'll have energy being pulled from the sitters. They can feel energetic emanations from their body. I definitely feel it from mine. Normally you have to be in trance. I mean, this is what we've learned, that you're normally in trance when they're pulling out ectoplasm, but that's
Yeah.
not always the case. You can feel emanations of like some kind of energetic expression, ectoplasm moving out from my body. I can feel it at times. So it's like when you're in the cabinet. For me, I call it the microwave. Because it can get very, very energetic in there. It can and it's hard to describe. But there are times where I feel I've even okay. So once I asked them about it. I'm like, okay, what is this? What this is? They pulled something out and then slapped me in the face with it. While I was conscious, yeah, to prove that that's what was going on. And I thought, okay, I know that might sound strange, and I know that for physical mediums, there's no like one path, and the phenomena is different for everybody. So whether they're going to go on and utilize ectoplasm in large amounts, and then move in that direction for materializations, perhaps it'll be for something else, or who knows. So we have to be open to what they want and where they want to go with it, what makes sense. But in my room, my seance room, the sensations slightly less than they are in the cabinet, because there's sitters on Sunday, and on Sunday, there are people that they're drawing energy from to help develop me in the cabinet. But on Wednesdays, there's nobody to draw energy from, right? So the phenomena or the sensations are a little less. So it's not going to be as intense. So yeah, there's ectoplasm being utilized, but there's also energy being used from the sitters, manipulated by the spirit team. So the spirit team is utilizing some kind of energy from the sitters to create phenomena. So, and maybe some of that is ectoplasmic, maybe some of it isn't. I don't know. Maybe none of it is. So we're at an early stage where we don't know. But I can tell you, emanations come from my body. I've felt, and and I've been told as well.
Yeah.
So I have validation for that.
Honey.
Very
Okay.
interesting. I mean, ectoplasm is such a wild subject, and especially when it's
Yeah.
occurring, so you're beginning to actually feel things in your body, something being drawn out of you. And that sounds pretty wild. By the way, I am reporting from a glorious kitchen here in Kiev, Ukraine. I hear there's a ghost that walks by in a black hoodie. So if anybody sees this ghost, go down in the comments below in case you've seen him walk by. But also, it's possible that my battery might run out here, and I might disappear, which will look to people watching as a cut, because I'll just cut it when I edit. But for you guys here in the chat, if I disappear, it means I have to go and grab my plug and plug my laptop back in. So my battery drained from like 100 down to 30. I don't know, what's draining it so quickly. Maybe it's a spirit coming in through this Zoom, like maybe it's coming through Rob's, but anyway, so yeah, so that's really interesting about it sounds like you're basically an energy-based circle, but there's some kind of ectoplasm coming in. So it's really interesting. Okay, so anybody else have any questions for Rob? If not, I'm just going to bug him with a couple more
I
questions.
have another one.
Yeah,
So
please.
can anyone, I kind of heard you say, so anyone can come and, or not come, but like get on Zoom and watch through their laptops, yes? And follow the rules and whatever, right? Yeah?
Well, there's not a lot to watch because we cover up our monitors,
Oh,
but you can participate by singing
okay.
and joining the circle, singing and sitting under those conditions. So
Okay.
that's the price you pay in participating with the Zoom physical circle.
Yes. Okay, got it.
Rob, so I wanted to ask you a couple things before, while we still have some time left, which is one, you mentioned back near the beginning about the earthbound spirit coming in, and you were saying you were wondering out loud, like what kind of protocols are in place to allow a spirit person from what I would call the near earth astral to just bump in and crash the circle. So what kind of protocols are in place? Has the oracle, as you call her, been able to produce any kind of spirit team to protect the seance room? Because from what I know from researching the spiritualist literature and researching the physical mediums, they'd always have like a spirit team or like some kind of a group that would protect the circle. For example, the late Douglas Osborne, who passed away a couple of weeks ago, he often talked about a complex spirit team that would help him, and he was only a trance medium. But I also know there are famous physical mediums spoke about this. So what do you know about this? What's going on? Is it something to be concerned about? What do you have? Do you have any more comments about this?
Sure. We do have a team. We've been made known of this team for years now. They're called the Masters of Light, and that is what they call themselves. Where there is light, there must be darkness as well, right? So it's interesting that they're the Masters of Light. They are in control of the circle. They're the ones that direct. They are the overall directors of what's going on. There's indications of like there's a control. There's I guess an infrastructure with a hierarchy, and this team are interconnected with other teams. So the coordination on the other side is pretty vast. So there's a vast coordination amongst these teams, interconnected with other teams on the other side. So they're working. They have a concerted effort. They're working in some kind of organizational pattern. They're aware of each other. They're aware of us and what they want to do with us. However, I think they are not able to, and this is sort of the dark secret, right? This is the fear. They're not able to control the environment as perfectly as they probably like to. In other words, there are situations that are out of their control, and this is known in the literature. They talk about this kind of thing in the 19th century. Seances can't get off. They can't go off because if the conditions aren't right. And that's, Leslie Flint, there's been seances where, he had to call them off because nothing was happening because the conditions aren't right. Well, conditions not being right could very well be not just, some kind of bad physics, right? Things aren't gelling on the other side, or, things aren't happening, in a physical way between the spheres. But rather, there are opposing forces that intercede, that interfere with what we're doing. And this is what we have direct knowledge of now. So our most recent experience is of these forces that wanted to interfere and really made a mess of things by being able to invade the circle and kind of try to hijack it for their own purposes. The team was not able to control that. They were not able to hold back these hordes that moved in and tried to subsume the circle and make our work impossible. And that happened recently. And it's a terrifying thing.
Yeah, lower
talk about.
dimensional entities. I mean, think about what the motivations might be. I mean, we've encountered them in out of body states as shadow people. Some could interpret this as being the reptilian alien archetype, whatever it may be. But some people call them archonic forces. But they want to keep people as ignorant and in the dark as possible, so they can leech off of us in a parasitic way. That's what I believe. And
That's it. That's exactly it, Cyrus. That's exactly what we learned. That's what we learned. That's it. That seems to be the motive is to stop circles, disrupt them, make it impossible for us to work for a time, just so that we are prevented from doing something for whatever reason. I mean, there are dozens of circles out there. That, we're not the only one. So I do not want to push the idea of fear at all, that one should be afraid to approach the spirit world at all. But like I said before, you have to have that discernment. If you're going into the seance room, you're sitting for physical, you're sitting for trance. You need to be able to discern the good from the bad, because the bad will play you. They will play you, and they will seek to control your abilities. To deny that is imbecilic and naive. And we were imbecilic and naive because we thought, oh no, we've never had an issue in 10 years. We never had any kind of negativity. And then boom, there we are. There they come in and they hijack the circle. They make us question the team and ability to control the situation. They hurt one of the circle members. They hurt one of the circle members by invading his mediumship, and where we thought it was the team working with this individual was in fact these invading forces. They were taking him. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. No, I don't mean to interrupt you. So I'll actually go on. So how was he hurt exactly?
Okay, so we were in the circle. This individual was taken over, like in a sort of in a trance state, and he was speaking other voices. He was his involuntary body movements. He was moved, and we thought, okay, this is phenomenal. The team is working with this individual. We had no reason to think at all that it was anybody else but the team doing this. But we all kind of felt like, okay, this is a little strange. We've never experienced this before. This person is new. What's going on here? So we were questioning, but maybe we weren't questioning enough. It turns out that this individual was really being attacked. They were being attacked by lower level entities in our circle. And we were taken aback completely. So the conditions went from being safe for over 10 years to being completely unsafe for an evening. And it was an absolutely terrifying thing. Why it was allowed to happen, how it happened, was, it would later to be revealed that there was sorry, it's my dog. More or less a systematic attack on our circle. And they sought out the new sitter who had pretty phenomenal mediumistic ability and completely invaded his space, invaded his field, and sought to manipulate him for whatever purpose. And it was.
I gotta jump in here, so I don't know how much. We don't have too much time left. I just want to say that this. We can get really crazy and think about these archonic forces and how they might be manifesting on a bigger level on this planet, not just attacking your seance team, but it goes to show you that they see you as a threat, or they see a seance, a physical circle as a threat. And you have to think about this on a wider level. Why would they see you as a threat? Why would they attack you? And the only logical answer to that would be they're trying to prevent mankind from waking up in any kind of way. They're trying to keep us down in the dirt. And why are they doing that? So it kind of goes back to what I said before. We can only imagine how deep this kind of thing goes. and that they would, that they're organized enough to see, okay, well, we see there's a developing physical circle, so we have to try to stop them and go after them. And so I think everybody involved in all of these areas, we all have to be kind of paladins. We all have to be like kind of warriors of light, and we have to develop relationships with our higher selves and be able to project that, channel that, that counter energy to be able to, when necessary, fight them. And also you have to stay critical minded and sharp, because the dark forces are master sociopaths. When you see like a crazy extreme level sociopath on this planet, where did that soul come from? Well, this is the realm that they came from. You can call it hell, you can call it the lower spheres, or whatever you want to call it, but it's a vast and powerful organizational structure, just like on the higher spheres. And we have to be very vigilant, and also be very vigilant about the information that we allow ourselves to consume, because there's a lot of quirky channeled material out there, and some of it seems all love and light, but then you analyze it and it's like, if you listen to this person, they're saying you can go and, commit horrible crimes and have no consequences, because you pass away and you go straight to some heavenly realm no matter what you do. Some of these really weird philosophies. And I'm just saying, when you hear something that really contradicts what makes like moral sense, what makes spiritual sense, keep in mind that there's forces that are master manipulators, and we have to be vigilant. We don't want to fall into paranoia. We don't want to become like the UFO field. It's just, crazy paranoid about everybody and everything. But we have to become, we have to stay kind of warriors of light. So Rob, any last things you want to share before we call it a night?
Yeah, I think what you just said was very well put, Cyrus. I believe that relationship with higher beings of love and light are very real, and I think that's part of our inheritance as human beings. This is Earth School. We're here to learn, and we need to be able to open up and grow in that love and light and connect. If you have abilities, you should use them, not necessarily brandize. You should use it to help other people. Don't be so arrogant. And and to think that we are not going to be besieged potentially by forces that oppose selfless action. We're here to do this work fundamentally to help other people, not necessarily help ourselves, right? So there are going to be people that are antagonistic to that on the other side, and there's, I think, too little emphasis put on the ability to discern a room, discern a setting. So if you are establishing a physical circle or a trance circle, feel that room out every night. Do your due diligence and do your protection, but feel it out. If it doesn't feel right, even if you're getting phenomena, if it doesn't feel right, you need to stop. The circle leader needs to be able to be aware of the spiritual conditions of the room, and they need to be able to just stop it if it doesn't feel right, because
this even goes with Ouija boards and things like that. So also something for you guys to keep in mind. Rob, we're just about out of time. I know my laptop's gonna it's just waiting to die. It's like desperately wants to shut off. So let's kind of wrap it up here. Rob, thanks so much for coming out, and really important subjects. I think we should do this again, do a part 2, and keep talking about some of these things.
Thank you, everybody.
Really interesting.
Thank you, Keely. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Paula, for coming out. And if you guys like this interview, you want to get involved more with Afterlife Topics, head to afterlifetopics.com, pick up some books like Understanding Life After Death or The Afterlife and Beyond. Sign up as a patron, or just say hi at the Facebook group Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics, where, as Rob put it, I mean, the ongoing battle between light and dark, sounds kind of like a biblical thing, but there is truth behind all of that. And that's what we're working on. We want to get people aware of these things, and doing that can mean going against oppositional forces, but don't let that intimidate you on your journey, because you can win that little battle even by don't get seduced by negative thoughts and darkness. I mean, that's the whole theme on this planet, it seems like. So, all right, Rob. All right, everybody. I'm gonna shut it off now. Thanks,
Well,
everybody.
thank you, Rob. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. It was
Thank you,
fun.
Rob.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, guys.
And
Bye.
I'll see you
Bye,
guys on the next
Bye.
video.
Evening.